It's April 5th, early. We're going to do a package installation to demonstrate how that's done. And before you get started with your package installation, you need to set out all your tools, everything that you need. You need a smoker, which you won't use, but you want to have it available and lit and ready to go. We have our package of bees. We have an entrance reducer. A bee brush comes in very handy with these because we're not going to use a lot of smoke. We have a hive tool. We keep an extra one in our back pocket, so when we lose this, we have that. We have a hive top feeder. We've got an inner cover and a lid, and we've got a vent box that's going to go on top. Over here, we've put the hive. We've got the hive ready to go. We've got a screen bottom board. We have put on that screen bottom board a box with undrawn foundation. And we're going to separate those, and we're going to show you how to do this. Always want to wear a hat or a veil. At least I usually wear a veil or wear a jacket, a bee jacket. But when you've got bees in a box or in a package, you want to look at your bees. These are fairly calm. There's a little bit of movement. If you look at this side of the package, there's not that much movement. These bees are calm. If you see your bees running around inside the package, that probably means they're getting hot. Don't overheat your bees. It's only about 65 degrees today, which is a perfect day for installation. Bees can be out in your garage in 40, 50, 60 degree weather. That's fine, just as long as there's not air on them, and they'll be fine in this package. They're better off in that condition than they are in your house at 70 degrees. Like I said, if they start to run around, you might want to mist this with just some water to cool them down and give them something to drink. Inside of this package, we have a can that feeds them, and for their trip. These bees have been in this package for about 3 days because they were shook about 3 days ago, and they're going to be installed today. So usually there's a cover on top of the can, which I just took off. There's usually a strap up here. They vary from manufacturer to manufacturer, but that's attached to your queen cage. So the first thing you do is you do a bump. So all the bees are clustered in the top of and you want to get the bees to drop to the bottom so you can pull this can out. If you try and pull the can out, all the bees are going to be stuck to it, and you're going to be trying to pull the bees and scrape the bees off instead of just doing just a quick bump like that. The bees drop to the bottom. You use your hive tool to grab this. Before you pull this out, make sure you've got a handle on your queen cage, and then we've got the bees in the bottom, and this is their feeder can. It has a few holes poked in it, and you just set that aside. That's done its job. So now we have the queen in a cage. We didn't bump very hard, so there's still a lot of bees on that. We can use this hive tool to scrape down, and what we're looking for on this is we want to make sure that the queen is alive, and I can see that she's a nice queen. She's in there by herself. She's walking around, and that's perfect. That's all we need to do. Also, there's a candy side of this. On this particular one, we are not going to release her right away. We're going to leave her in the cage. There's a cork on the end of the candy. You can pop that cork when she's ready to be released, but we're going to put her in there for a day, come back tomorrow, test and see if the bees are being aggressive like this. They don't seem to be being aggressive right now, but it's kind of hard to tell because they're pretty stressed. We're going to give them a day, come back and look and see how she's doing. So if they're sticking when you rub your hand across there and gripping to the screen, that means that they're being aggressive and they want to sting her. But these bees look fairly calm on her, but we're going to give them. We don't want to release her right now. We're going to give her some more time. Okay, trying to see if there's anything noticeable on these bees. They seem to be acting normal on her cage. So we bring the cage over. The first thing we want to do is we're going to insert the cage. Normally I don't try to insert the cage in the middle of the box. I usually try and insert it in the back, third, and as you can see, don't have to take this out, but for demonstration purpose, we want the screen facing this way or facing that way. We don't want the screen facing into the side of the foundation, because we want to have these bees have access to that queen to feed her, take care of her, and make sure that she's all right. So then we just take and we bend this over. Sometimes these straps are a little bit thinner, and you can actually hang them over a toothpick or a stick or a twig. So there you have it. The queen's been installed. We're going to push our frames together, and then we're going to dump our bees. You don't need to recover this package. You don't need to put bees on top of it or recover the bees. They're just going to hang out. And if you look around, there's bees flying, but they're going to find home. So you just want to dump your package. Just a little bit of shaking, a little bit of movement. And if you look, we've got the majority of the bees out, but we're going to go a little bit further because we want to have the bees, we want to get 90% of these bees out. We only want to have a few left. So you bang them down to the one side, bang them back, and you've got a pretty clean box. We can set this box on the ground now in front of the hive. Those bees will come out and they'll find their way in. So now we've got all these bees. They're surrounding the queen. They don't know where they're at. This is a whole new home for them. 3 days ago they were in Georgia. Today they're in Ohio. So they need to do, if you look around, there's a lot of orientation flights going on. Bees are just flying in circles, trying to orient themselves to the hive. So what we like to do is, what's an important part is just give them a little piece of pollen patty. There's nothing in this hive for them to eat. So we're going to feed them two things. We're going to feed them protein, which is a pollen patty, and we're going to feed them some sugar water, which is their carbohydrate. So we're just going to enter this on the top bars. Right next to the queen. The queen's right here. So that, you know, they're gonna cluster around that queen. We want them to cluster on this. You can see actually these bees are starting to munch on this pollen patty already. The protein, they need the protein to develop brood food. They can develop some from the fats that they carry in their body, but the protein addition helps. They're going to start, by the end of the day, probably within an hour or so, we're going to see pollen coming into this hive. But bees can't consume pollen. They need to make it into bee bread, which takes about 2 weeks. So for the first 2 weeks, this pollen patty is very important to the hive to keep it healthy and so they don't have all their reserves down. If you take a look at this bee, if we can zoom in on that bee, you can see it's fanning, and at the very tip, you can see their Nasinoff gland, and their Nasinoff gland is up. So at this point, what we want to do is we want to add the feeder, and so we need to push the bees off. Usually we use smoke to move bees around, but I don't want to smoke these bees because I want them to be able to smell where the queen is, because this is a new area. I want them to be I want them to move into the hive and be able to smell the queen, so they're moving in. And I want to get the feeder on and get this hive closed up as quick as I can. And the reason I want to do that is I want them to start using the entrance. Okay? So we put that on, we put the feeder on. We're only going to put about a quart or two, maybe a half gallon of feed. I'm only going to put it in one side. The bees will come up and feed on this. When they're done with that, I'll add more. Try and get the inner cover on. And then we're going to put a vent box on top of this. So moisture will build up from this feeder. So you need to have some ventilation, either a vent box or put some popsicle sticks underneath this inner cover. Either way, it works pretty well. And then I'm going to add there you have it. That's how you install a package. You can also add an entrance reducer. You get them down to about 3 or 4 inches on the entrance. That helps them with their protection. Thanks for watching.